Here with Andreas Heide, who's on his Juno 37 in Denmark, and we have executive editor Herb McCormick in Newport, and I'm sweltering in the heat and humidity up here in Boston. So kind of a cosmopolitan little gathering we have today. Just before we get started, just a couple things. This is hopefully a little bit of interactivity going on here. So if you have some questions, at the bottom of the screen, there's a Q&A button. And if you turn that on, you can type in questions and Herb will be watching them. And we'll try to get some along to Andreas as we go along. I also need to thank our sponsor this week, Mount Gay Rum. It's a fine sailor's rum. Herb has his old bottle there. Mix mine up with a little bit of a tonic and a splash of lime, and it's very refreshing on a humid day. So Andreas, I think we first met you, Cruising World first met you a few years back when you were on a little adventure to Iceland, and I remember the pictures of the skiing and the paragliding, and we thought, who is this madman? So kind of tell us a little bit about how you got into this whole adventure sailing thing and some of your exploits up to this point.
Well, thank you, Mark. First, I have to do some corrections. It's the country is Norway.
Oh, no, sorry.
It's a bit like U.S., Canada, but it's fine. It's one of these.
It's all over there.
It's all over there. Yes, it's pretty close. It's close enough, though. And then, furthermore, the first time we reached out to you guys was when we sailed to Jan Mayen in 2012, which is some time back now. And let me see if I can show you Jan Mayen. So that should be. So Jan Mayen is this small island between Iceland, Greenland, and Svalbard, and so this is the island we sailed to in 2012. And that's 3 years after I started sailing. So, and the first year after I started sailing, we sailed to Greenland. So I guess to understand me as a sailor, you have to understand my background. And I grew up just next to the water in Norway. I had my first engine boat when I was 8, started freediving when I was like 6 or 7. And then progressively, together with friends, we started exploring the ocean and going further and further ashore. I started diving when I was 16. And then I progressed as a military diver and parachutist in the Navy, also officer training. So I spent 2 years in the Norwegian Armed Forces. Additionally, I have a master in marine biology. And I worked at the Institute of Marine Research and also worked with, for the oil and gas and renewables with seafloor mapping. And I've always worked with or in relation to the ocean. And it's in 2009 that I bought my first boat, which was a identical boat of Barba, which was, let me change. Are you seeing this photo?
Oh, you'll need to reshare it.
Yeah, just 1 second. And there we go. So are you seeing it's Mark?
Yep, we're seeing it.
Okay, perfect. So it's in 2009 that we, together with a friend, I bought the first boat, which is a Sunfast 37, which is what I have today as well. And it had been a charter boat in the UK. And we bought it cheap and brought her back to life and sailed her to Norway. And at that time, we didn't know much about sailing, but we were learning on the way, but we had some basic technical understanding. But we did a lot of mistakes, but we made it to Norway. And then the following year, we sailed to Greenland, which is kind of ambitious, but it's inspired by our Viking heritage, I guess. And this is us in 2010 sailing to Greenland, where we had a fair understanding of the ice, and we knew that you had to anchor shallow to avoid the big icebergs, but still you would get the small ones in even shallow waters. And I think what's interesting about my sailing career is that we started off with almost nothing in terms of electronics and help on the boat. So initially we just had a computer and a USB GPS antenna, sailed to Greenland on outdated charts, and then today we have everything you can imagine in terms of electronics and gear and everything. And I think that's important, but if something fails, we can still go back to the old skill sets of navigating the boat with close to nothing, which is good. And also we've been through all the cycles. So initially we didn't have an anchor winch, we didn't have a radar, we didn't have an AIS, and just understanding how useful these devices are has been helped us push the limits even further. So I'll just show you some photos from our, call it, sailing career so far. I showed you Jan Mayen on the map. This is from Jan Mayen, where we sailed for 5 days from Norway, and then made it to Jan Mayen, where there's no port. And then we climbed the Berenberg mountain, which is 2,277 meters, which would be 6,000 feet thereabout. And the boat to us it's a platform for adventure, both for diving and paragliding and hiking. And in the later years, it's been more and more science, and it's all inspired by my childhood hero, Jacques Cousteau. Was a first and foremost, he was a conservationist who used the marine environment and footage to tell his story and to reach a global audience, and that's what we're trying to do. There is a big part of passion as well in what we do, obviously, because you need passion to be sailing in the Arctic, especially in the winter when it's rather cold, but we'll get to that later. Moving on. So this is in 2015, we sailed to Svalbard, Svalbard is situated north of Norway. And we sailed all the way up. This just another photo. Yeah, we met with a polar bear in Svalbard, in fact, 7 of them. So this one tried to climb on board a boat. I was going to show some photos. Yeah, so here we are. If you can see the boat here, we're in the pack ice around. So this is the pack around the North Pole. And to me, sailing is about having a dream and then turning it into reality. And one of my dreams was to sail as far north as I could. And I guess this is as far north as you should go with a fiberglass boat built for the Mediterranean.
I was going to say, it's not really the boat that you would pick for polar adventures, is it?
No, not really. I dare say that we had done some proper planning. I worked as a deckhand in Greenland. I've interviewed probably 50 captains that sail in the ice. We checked the weather forecast. We didn't go very far in, and we knew that there were other boats in the area should something go wrong. So you can say that, yes, it was a bit risky, but I think the worst thing that could have happened is that we would have lost the boat and then would have had to wait for a couple of hours and return in as failures, but still alive. I think it's one of these Antarctic explorers who's better alive as a donkey than dead as a lion or something, and that's kind of part of how we sail. We occasionally risk the boat, but never risk the crew to the extent that's possible. Yeah, so here we are back in the ice, and it's kind of surprising how strong these fiberglass boats are. They can take quite a bit of ice, but what they can't take is if you get a wind push in here, the ice will start to close and then you'll sink rather rapidly. But that's why we have a life raft and survival suits and all kinds of safety gear. But to date, despite of all the sailing we've done, we've never had any injuries to either crew or to the boat, like nothing serious, which we're very proud of. Moving on, so here at 81 degrees, and you can see the radar image with the red specks, which is ice, and the radar has been very useful both for navigating in the ice and also obviously at night in the Arctic. Also, we use the radar a lot to see incoming weather systems in the dark. It's very useful. This is again using the boat as a platform for exploring the ocean and the Arctic. And in this case, we were 40 days without supplies, 5 people with 2 sets of diving gear, 2 paragliders, and a whole lot of other stuff to keep us going in the ice. And as you can see, we have diesel tanks here. So we had 500 liters of diesel. I don't know how that translates to gallons, but half a ton of diesel. And it's surprising how much stuff you can fit in a boat, but at this point it was rather full. This is a photo from sailing the Norwegian coast in the winter, and it's just to show the diversity of the conditions under which we sail. And obviously icing is a big threat to any boat sailing in the high latitudes. But in the winter, we don't push the limits with this boat. We stay close to shore, so if something happens, we can take shelter. But obviously sailing, this is minus 20 degrees Celsius, and if you were sailing in these conditions far offshore, you would be in trouble. But this was fine, actually. Also, this is diving with an iceberg in Greenland, again to show that we're not just sailing, but we're using the sailboat as a platform to explore the marine environment. Paragliding as well. And paragliding has some similarities to sailing in terms of you use the wing principle to stay afloat. This is from Svalbard. And then in the later years, we have started to doing using a manta trawl to trawl for microplastic. This is in Faroe Islands. Working with scientists. So this is working with the University of Iceland. We're taking blubber samples from a humpback whale. You can see the arrow that's being shot into the humpback whale, and then you get small blood sample from the whale, which is used for scientific purposes. You can do DNA tagging and so on, and look for micropollutants. Yeah, we talked about the red hat inspired by Jacques Cousteau, and then I think that's all the photos from the kind of the.
Andreas, those photos are absolutely unbelievable. I mean, I can't believe all that you've accomplished on a stock Jeanneau 37. I went through the Northwest Passage almost 10 years ago on a 64-foot steel expedition yacht, which many times felt too small for what we were doing. And yet you're up there, and not only are you doing this on a stock boat, but you're also carrying this amazing amount of gear. You've got dive gear, you've got, you know, all the different stuff you've got. Where do you put everything?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's we only have the boat. I could show you around in the boat if that's of interest. Is that something you want
I'd love to have a little look. Sure.
Let's see if that's going to work. So it's well, it's a standard Jeanneau 37. As we know, we can start in the bow. So typically on expeditions, we have a divider here, and then we have gear on the starboard side, and then one person sleeping on the port side. You can see here we have all kinds of mesh bags with spare parts and whatnot. There's a lot of storage under the beds, as you know. Fishing gear. Any good boat needs to have fishing gear. And then we have the saloon, which again is kind of typical to any boat. You don't need to look far to see where all the gear is stored. There we have life jackets. On the opposite side we have survival suits, and we also use, for instance, we use the diving dry suits that double as survival suits for some of the crew. Yeah, nets installed everywhere to keep your gear. Also, this is kind of clever. We have like ropes under the table to dry stuff. Can you see this?
Yes.
Equally here. And then net there. You can see the Webasto exhaust coming out here. So everything that's wet just dries under the table, which is convenient. yeah, otherwise it's kind of a standard boat with all the gear that you need. Obviously tools to fix things that you keep breaking. And then these are one of the cabins. So we have wooden dividers to keep the crew apart. That's been far superior to lee cloths. So when we're spec'd for an expedition, we have 4 people sleeping in 2 cabins aft, and then 1 person sleeping in the bow. And then if we're 6 people, the 6th person will sleep on the couch. So if you're good friends, it's perfectly doable. And then additionally, you see the 2nd cabin, which is identical to the.
What if you're not good friends, Andreas?
Yeah, it's either you're good friends or not after a long time at sea. Additionally, we have all kinds of the life jackets hanging ready for use. A lot of systems and a lot of specialized gear that we've acquired with time. We also have a diving compressor on board. And yeah, so there is a lot of gear on board, and it is kind of amazing that we make it happen. But when you have good people on board, you can make it happen. So that's so a lot of people talk so much about the boats, but it's talking about the crew is equally, at least as important as you know, Herb.
Andreas, I was kind of curious, you know, when it seems like when you first started doing this, it was sort of going off for an adventure and having some fun. And it seems like you kind of switched gears to it's much more scientific and purpose driven now. But talk a little bit about who you look for to go on these adventures with you.
Yeah, so there's a logical explanation to that. So initially when we started sailing, we had enough just staying afloat. There was so much new things you had to handle, and the boat was poorly maintained as a ex-charter boat, and things kept falling apart. But now the boat is in mint condition, better than new, I'd say. So now we've kind of freed up resources to start pursuing the Cousteau dream, which is to do ultimately to be nature conservationists, and we do that by using stunning footage and then working with amazing people in the form of scientists and journalists and storytellers. And by combining all these elements, we kind of have a mission and a purpose with what we do. And for me, just to sail out there just for the purpose of sailing isn't enough. It feels better to have, it makes it less selfish, and it makes it more uniting when you have a goal with it all. And also it's very exciting to go out with a purpose to get, for instance, try to get the best whale footage the world has ever seen, or try to find rare whale species, or go out with a purpose and a meaning. So rightfully so, we've been able to implement science in the later years, and progressively as well, working with some of the premier photographers around. So that's been an honor, and some of this has been thanks to you guys. You were one early adopter of Barba, Mark, so that's
we're big fans of that. Big fans.
That's mutual.
Andreas, I have a question from one of our viewers who wants to know the origin of Barba. Where did the name come from?
Oh, that's my favorite question, and also one of my favorite answers. So my parents had 2 sons, and my mother wanted a daughter, and my father wanted a dog. So my father got the dog, and my mother got me. So that's so Barba is the dog that looked after me, cared for me as a child. So when I was sleeping outside, she would lie next to me, looking after me. And we were just the best of friends. And I think that the name is for the dog's loyalty, which is crucial for anyone in life, and especially on a boat. And also for the dog's ability to be satisfied with the simple things in life, which is like friends and going for a hike. And if you give a dog a wooden stick, it's having a blast. And I think there's a lot to be learned from these simple creatures. We tend to overcomplicate things and search joy in things that costs too much, and so I think that's why I like the name. And it's also, I can never be angry with Barba. Anyone that owns a boat knows that it can be a challenge at times to have a boat. and Barba's as well. But there's so much 13 years of positive association with the name Barba as a child. So yeah, thank you for that question.
Andreas, I'm a fan of the high latitude sailing, and obviously you are too. But what are the challenges? Two questions. Do you have any desire to sort of head towards the equator, to head south, to get in the trade winds? And the second part of the question is, what is it about the high latitudes that you find so challenging and alluring?
Yeah, so I think I have an addiction to challenge and excitement, and I would love to sail south, but from Norway you have to sail really far south before you come to these uncharted areas and unknown areas. So that's one thing. And also it's my also a curse in life that I enjoy the challenge so much when it's difficult, that if it's too easy I get bored. So I find it very stimulating when you have to handle all these difficult conditions. And also to me sailing is partially about getting away from people and just going out there in nature. And if you sail in Europe, that's pretty hard, except from Norway. So I don't know if that covers your question. But yeah, all my friends want me to sail south, but it's no luck so far.
So, Andreas, when you obviously you have a lot of different people on the boat, for the different adventures. Do you do any kind of training, or are they all pretty good sailors when they come on board?
They're mostly lousy sailors, so that's a challenge we have, and that's why we try to keep the boats as simple as possible, because many of the people we work with are eminent writers and cinematographers, photographers, but sometimes the sailing skills are kind of lacking. But I try to have at least one other competent sailor on board, and then we kind of train the other ones on the go. But with two competent sailors on a boat, hopefully me being one of them, we're able to keep going for extended duration of time. And then if you pick, for instance, someone who's a climber or a paraglider pilot, someone who's used to being in the outdoors, they will typically rather quickly pick up on the basic sailing skill sets needed. But yes, we're always looking for competent crew, and it's hard to find people with. You can have competition sailors who doesn't know anything about navigating, who doesn't know anything about doing a reefing at night in a blizzard, and who are not used to this long distance cruising. And I think expedition sailing, as we do, or adventure sailing, it's just as much about being technically, like the engineering and understanding how stuff works is equally as important as understanding the sailing and the ocean. But we still do sail. That's the.
So these last couple winters, you've been not spending them home sitting by the roaring fire. Tell us a little bit about your adventures for the last couple of years.
Yeah, so it all started in 2015 when I got an assignment as a underwater photographer for a journalist friend to photograph orcas in northern Norway, and it was I went up there, and I was just like a guy on a rib. There was 10 of us. We chased out for 3 hours and found the whales and jumped in, and then we had to go back because we had to eat lunch. And that's when I knew, okay, next year I'm taking my own boat and doing this on my own. I don't want anyone to tell me when I have to get out of the water to eat lunch when there's whales around me. So that's how it started. 2016, we sailed up the Norwegian coast in January when it's rather cold and rather dark. And then initially we had virtually no insulation in the boat. And as we've been freezing more and more over the years, we have progressively been insulating the boat more and more. So that's been, and learning how to dress properly at sea and so on. So now I've spent, I think it's 4 winters now in Arctic Norway, tracking orcas and humpbacks, working with film crews and journalists. And so I spent a lot of time with whales, and it's you know, it's cold and miserable, but when you get to spend time with orcas and humpbacks and understand their biology and see these magnificent creatures up close, also the sperm whales, it's highly rewarding.
So what were you thinking the first time you jumped in with the whales? Because a lot of people wouldn't think that would be a good idea.
Yeah, well, it's we've all seen the orcas that throw seals with their tails, so that's the first thing you think about. But then you comes to mind that no one has ever been attacked by an orca in the wild, and then you just have to, you know, rely on statistics that it's not going to happen. But the first time I jumped in, I was really scared. It was outside Faroe Islands, and I just jumped in, and I brought like a yellow bag so that I could tell that I wasn't a seal. And I jumped in, and I just tried to make like whale sounds so they would swim up to me, but they didn't. But they still scared me properly. But then later, now it's more, yeah, you get quite used to it actually. So now you kind of try to get in position and try to understand them, or if you're supporting a film crew, it's about getting the whales doing the right thing at the right time and having the right light and all these things.
So do you have any photos you could share with us of the
Yeah, I can show you. Let me show you. I can show you a video. I have a 1-minute video that kind of summarizes some of our work.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Just 1 second, I'll share my screen again. Or is it sharing now, or?
No, you need to share it again.
Yeah, there we go. So I believe now you can see my screen.
Yep.
It's a 1-minute video, which summarizes. Yeah.
One of the things I enjoy the most with a sailboat is the sensation of freedom. You can go more or less anywhere, and you're not bound by other people or itineraries or flights or anything. And you do more or less whatever you want to, which is great. That's a good feeling. So to me and my crew, Barba is a platform for going out in nature. We have diving gear on board, paragliders, camera gear, freediving gear, climbing gear. So we keep changing the crew and the gear subject to what we're doing. Our mission this winter has been to make a documentary about the overwintering orcas in the wild, sparking enthusiasm for the ocean and thus contributing for its long-term protection.
Yes, that was a short little video. I think it's nice because it summarizes what we do, and then all this content that dates back to 2017, and the content we have now is far superior, but it's currently locked in with film production teams. But it's coming out this fall. We have a 20-minute session in a documentary series about orcas that's coming out. It's also coming out in the Smithsonian and US channels, so I look forward to seeing that myself. So it's quite annoying. We have so much content that we're not allowed to use, which is a bit frustrating at times, but that's how it is.
So how many whales are around you at a time when you're in there, when you're in a pod?
Yeah, so anywhere from, so we have been diving under fishing vessels, and then we have maybe like 40 or 50 orcas around us, and then maybe like 3 humpbacks, which we have on video, which is coming out this fall. So we have a lot of whales around us, it's kind of, yeah, I don't know, maybe 50 orcas at once. But it's hard to, you can't see that far in the water, so maybe you see 30, 40 at once, which is still pretty good.
It must be incredible. And are there other whales around, or is it pretty much just the orcas that you're with?
No, so interestingly, in Norway, you have the orcas and the humpbacks together, whereas in other parts of the planet, if you go to Monterey Bay, you will see the orcas hunt the humpbacks. So that's just different subspecies and different behavior. So what we find in Northern Norway, we see oftentimes you have the orcas that's kind of gathering the herring and corralling it together and hunting it, and then out of nowhere the humpbacks comes in and just engulfs the entire bait ball and ends the party, so to say. So it takes advantage of the hunting of the orcas, but maybe it goes the other way as well. So it's it's interesting. And then this winter we saw, for the first time, we saw orcas hunting a humpback in Norway, or at least harassing it. So that was new to science. So we do come across, we spend so much time out there. Like I've spent probably 300 days looking at orcas by now. So
Wow.
in that time, you get to see things that no one's ever seen before. And yeah, and your fascination just keeps growing. So that's,
So when you're on site in northern Norway, in a typical day, how many hours are you spending in the water?
2 hours on a good day, maybe an hour. So the cool part is when you get out of the water and then you have to wait for the next whale encounter in your wetsuit. But that's once you're in the water, it's not that bad. You can spend like easily an hour in water that's close to freezing, which without difficulties. And that's the beauty of the barboat boat. She's built with a very low stern. So she's built for the med, but it's also very useful when you're free diving and diving and so it's a lot of the boats I see it looks like they're designed by people who are scared of water with that steep stern, and it's close to impossible to get into the boat, which makes no sense to me, but people are different, and I respect that. But at least to us who interact a lot with the water, like it's easy to get in and out, easy to if someone falls off, it's easy to winch them on board, which we've tried on one occasion, and then also to get access to the dinghy and so on. Of course, some safety drawbacks with waves coming in from the stern, but that hasn't been an issue so far, knock on wood.
So what are the plans for this year?
So currently I'm working on securing funding for a new winter with the orcas. It's a bit uncertain at the moment with this pandemic, which is affecting the people that are able to travel to Norway. I mainly work with foreigners. I'm more exotic outside Norway than in Norway, but that's fine. And then also we're planning a new expedition to Svalbard in 2021, hopefully taking advantage of the 10 years of experience in interacting with whales and also with all the fabulous people we've gotten to know onshore to work with as well. You guys at Cruising World being amongst them. So, and that's one of the most fascinating things about the sailing is all the people we get to meet. We meet people from all over the world, and many of these, call it extreme places, you meet extreme characters as well. So yeah, so that's very, very nice. And also one of my approaches to learning how to sail is that every time I see an expedition boat, I go and talk to the crew and the captain and exchange experience. And we have a lot of expedition boats sailing past Norway going to Svalbard, so there's been quite a few over the years.
In Norway, is there are they bullish on this kind of thing, on the marine research and stuff, or is that why we rely on outsiders?
If they're bullish, if it's kind of, I think we're so used to whales and snow and sailing in Norway. It's kind of part of the cultural heritage, so it's a tougher sell to sell in Norway. Of course, everyone's fascinated by whales, but it's more we're not aware of it ourselves. I think this Viking heritage and the coastal culture and these things, that's we're kind of passing on, that we are part of today.
We're kind of ate up that half hour very, very quickly. Any other photos you wanted to?
Yeah, how much time do we have left? Is it?
Oh, we have another 5 minutes or so.
Oh, only 5 minutes.
Try to keep it to around 40 minutes or so.
No, that's fair. Okay, yeah, that's yeah, I could, let's see what I have. I have a polar bear trying to climb on board a boat. Are you seeing this?
No, you need to share again.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so this is a polar bear who tried to climb on board a boat.
I noticed in a lot of your photos you have rifles. I guess that's because of the polar bears, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because that's because if this guy came on the boat, he would kill all of us in an instant. Not because he's mean or anything, but just because he's hungry. So that's fair. And this is a young male. So he spent 15 minutes trying to climb on board the boat, which was kind of interesting. Also, we can show you, yeah, a lot of gear on the boat. So this is the latest upgrade, which is LED lights on the masts, which allows us to see in the dark, basically. Especially Northern Norway winter time, getting into harbors and so on, there can be a lot of things you can't see. Or if you're going into Anchorage, it makes a lot of sense to have all this light, as you can see here. So it lights up everything basically, which is rather useful. And then in terms of photos, what do you want to see? We have whales. Let's see. Yeah, this is an orca bull, and then we have our sail there in the back. And then here you have the BBC Blue Planet boat. They're not sailing, but that's so here we have the barber boat, and then we have a humpback in a cloud of herring. So herring is the prey animal in Northern Norway in the winter. Yeah, this is the first humpback whale I got to swim with. You can see myself in the background. That's before we knew how to approach them. I like this photo a lot. It's a walrus colony in Svalbard with the boat in the back. And these are male walrus, which are they're not very scared of humans at all, actually.
How close could you get to them?
Closer than you're allowed to get to them. You can know, as long as you don't disturb them, you can get quite close, and they don't get disturbed. But you shouldn't walk upright. You should just crawl up to a walrus, because if it sees your silhouette, it gets scared. And you should treat all the animals you encounter with respect, which we do. Although sometimes to get a good photo of a whale, you have to get up close. But they typically don't care. And this is humpbacks in Iceland, seen from the masts. This is just a screen grab from video that's coming out at some point with free diving with an orca bull in shallow water. And we spent like an hour together with this pod of orcas. This is from last summer, sailing to Iceland, where we had 200 or 300 pilot whales following the boat for half an hour at 7 knots speed, which was quite impressive. We could hear the whistles from the pilot whales inside the boat. It's quite something. It was too windy for us to stop, so we couldn't do it safely. And the pilot whales are a bit smaller than the orca. This is we met with the beluga whale, Valdemir, who is spending some time in Norwegian waters this winter. And this is a stunning photo by Connor McDonald of a I think it's a white-beaked dolphin in Iceland. And this photo has, yeah. And there's the polar bear, which we've covered already. So I think this kind of, yeah, there's a lot of content, and we can't do it all in half an hour, but at least this was some of it. So yeah.
Well, maybe next fall, once your Smithsonian event has happened and you're able to share some of that, it would be great to have you back. And
of course, if you let me back, I'd be happy to. And if I could thank my sponsors as well, that would be great. Is that okay?
Yeah, please. Yeah, give them a plug.
Yeah, it's Musto and B&G, and then also Spinlock and Dubarry. That's our main sponsors at the moment.
Those are some good friends to have.
Yeah, they're the best friends to have, at least when it comes to sailing. So that's and we wouldn't be able to do this without them. We'd still be sailing, but all this gear helps us to interact with nature in new and better ways. It gives us more freedom to operate, which is great.
Well, unfortunately, we're just about out of time here. Any last thoughts there, Herb?
Andreas, that was absolutely fantastic. I enjoyed every minute of it. That 40 minutes just zipped by. Thank you so much, man. And keep doing what you're doing. You're the real deal. And we're proud to be able to be your publisher in the States, and keep doing amazing things, man.
Yeah, thank you. And it's, you know, I also have to thank my crew and all the people who are helping this become a reality, and including you guys. So yeah, bigger things to come. Have a lovely day, and then we catch up soon.
We need more stories, Andreas.
More stories coming. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.